right. Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is Tom Randall. I want to welcome you to today's Integrity Short-Term Care Initiative webinar. I've joined it with my partner in crime, Dennis Reiner. As you know, Dennis and I have been working real closely together in this live webinar training that we've done. We're in the middle of our 48 live webinars in 38 business days or something like that. So we're coming towards the last couple of weeks of it, actually. So we've really enjoyed doing the training so far. And as you can hear, for those who are jumped on early, we are bantering back and forth. Dennis and I were out of town at one of our carriers in our extended care portfolio. We were out visiting with their support team and just ironing out all the different things and trying to make sure we had all of our ducks in a row to come into 2024 coming out swinging as well. So we're excited about that. Again, Dennis and I have had the pleasure of working together for many years. Most of you have been on other ones of our calls, so I don't need to bore you with that side of it. But I tell you what, we are having fun with some of these webinars. The product training is always there, but it's kind of fun getting involved in more of the conceptual selling, et cetera. And part of that is today the self-insure. And if for some of you might have been on the phone, actually, I see some agent names who are deep in the weeds in long-term care and extended care. And you know that when we do training on this, it's really a big part of long-term care training for sure, about saying, we're selling a kind of a high-end price product in a lot of cases, and people are looking at it with a use it or lose it. And they're thinking about self-insuring. And there's a lot of different things that go into that. And I want to make sure you guys know on this call, there's a lot of you who aren't deep into long-term care or extended care. And we always try to hit the simple button. So we're going to talk a lot today about don't overkill on this. You don't have to worry about even some of the calculators and all that fun stuff. Later on this afternoon, we have Medicaid planning. So we just are making sure you're aware of it. Make sure it might come up. And we're trying to give you kind of a 30,000 foot view. This slide you see in front of you, as you guys all know from all of our trainings and webinars, I usually spend time on this back in the early days, and we're trying to speed it up nowadays and not spend as much time, but it's always just as important. That's one of the things I want to make sure you know, is that this slide is really important as well, because of the fact that it is important with the gray hair in America and the baby boomers aging, that we really do know what we're doing is for a very, very good reason. Okay, so, and a lot of times here we show kind of our plan availability in the states, and we're just going to show you on the website where you can find all that at the end today. And it's going to be more of kind of an open discussion. I always say might be a shorter webinar, and then we get rolling. We start bringing up more points and we stretch it right out. So apologize for that for some of you who have a lot of this as repeats, but I'm going to let Dennis jump in. And as we go in today talking about self-insuring, it's part of that overall objections, and we're going to talk about the broad view of that in a couple of these early slides here. And I always start out saying, remember the first one, simple button, simple. People are out there. We're not asking you to pull away from what you do every day. We're asking you just to say, when you get done selling a med sup or an MA or a final expense or whatever you might be selling as your primary product, keep doing that and doing it well. That's a win for everybody. But remember, the need is out there. So start the conversation. Literally as simple as make sure you have your extended care taken care of, right? And then realize that a lot of people come back saying, oh yeah, I have it taken care of. So we always say, find out and say, oh great, what do you have? Just to see if they're trying to get you a smoke objection, just to say, I don't want to talk about any more buying today. So I'm going to see if I can get rid of you easy. And clients do that naturally. Humans do that, right? And at the end of the day, sometimes they're going to throw it out there saying, I want to think about it, or you know what, we're not really ready to make that decision, but thanks, let's come back to it some other time. And we just want to make sure, that's fine. But a lot of the times they just don't really want to make themselves uncomfortable for a half a minute, and you can get over it very easy as well. So Dennis, I'll turn it back over to you and talk about some of the different things with objections in a broad view, and then we'll dive into the self-insure a little bit closer. If that's okay with you.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Tom. Tom's absolutely right. In most cases, you're not going to encounter, we built a lot of the, objection busters, if you will, especially because of, as Tom said, when you're dealing with a higher price ticket item, agents who don't have that experience because they maybe have not sold a lot of long-term care, and this sales process is a lot different. It's similar, but there is differences when it comes to the extended care, because these plans are more affordable. There's less moving parts, and we're placing, back up around 90% of the business. And clients, because it's a full indemnity, they're more motivated because they're getting cash out of these plans. So there's differences, and I don't think you're going to encounter a lot of those objections. But having said that, nonetheless, I mean, people have knee-jerk reactions. It's almost like when you think about this idea of self-insuring, and I can retain the risk and everything else that we're going to cover. If you didn't know better, you would think that, just like how you've come to this webinar to hear us speak, that these consumers get invited to webinars to learn how to actually, have these pat answers to put roadblocks in front of agents. They rehearse it and they practice it. You almost get that feeling, if you've done this for some period of time, that you think, man, I've been out for just a short period of time selling extended care, and I've heard all the objections. And you really have. There's not, there is pretty much a finite list. And so, Tom, as we talk about this from a standpoint of, do I need this product? Do I like this product? Can I afford this product? It's, people, I've said this in our other previous trainings, that they don't, people oftentimes will not always buy what they need, but they certainly almost always will buy what they want. And the key is to get them to want it, because if not, they're going to look for a way to have an escape hatch, right? I mean, it's like going into the movie theater, and you walk into the movie theater and you're basically walking down the road to get to your seat, and what do you see is those big red signs up by the screen, and that's the exit door. They're looking for the exit door, and your job is to close those exit so that by overcoming this thought process that they have about whether or not they actually will move forward. And it's easy because the client has these different fears. And some of it is not just listed here, making a decision or making a wrong decision. It could be the lack of trust or understanding or urgency. I have done a little fireside chat that talks about the 7 reasons why people don't actually buy from you. And you may want to, when Tom shows us the website, you may want to take an opportunity. I think it's only a 6 or minute little conversation. So it's really short. You can get through it very quickly. It's not like a full-blown webinar, but it all starts with the word no. That's the start of every reason. No need, no help, no hurry, no time, no want, no like, no money. That lack of trust is similar to not liking you. And I don't say that when I say that in a way that most people conduct themselves very professionally, but there's some people who don't go in and establish the rapport, and they don't really get people to that warm, fuzzy place before they actually jump into a presentation. And so if they haven't established that rapport and created that integrity, it's really hard to persuade. And so these objections are, just so you know, it's a normal process. And what we're trying to do today is to show you where the puddles are. And we know, so that you don't have to walk through the puddles yourself, that you can avoid those puddles and just be aware. And we have a separate webinar that we go more specifically to all the objections, but the one today about self-insuring or retaining the risk is really because the client thinks to themselves that they can handle it, that they've got a good sized nest egg, and that and what they're really saying when they want to say that they want to retain the risk is that they're really thinking this isn't going to happen to them. That's part of why they feel that they can handle it. It's not always part of why they feel that they have sufficient assets or sufficient income. In many cases, it's their own denial that this isn't going to happen. So, Tom, I think as we focus on that, um, the self-insuring, you've got some things as we go a little bit further down the road in this webinar that we've talked to, where there's a difference between this idea of retention. I have a separate little training acronym I want to give you today, and Tom, I'm throwing a little bit of a curveball your way, but that way for those that have been on the call previously. But what you really want to do is you want to create what I call, during your course of your presentation, is this track, TRACK. So the whole concept of track, and spelling it out, is the T represents the transferring of the risk. And when you talk to clients, what you need to do is you need to bring up these objections, and you need to take them off the table, because if you wait till they bring up this idea that they want to retain the risk, then that is going to be a situation where you're going to find that you're in a position of weakness yourself. You want to be proactive. You want to be able to more or less surface the objection. So that's the first step. And so if we think about transfer, you want to acknowledge to that client that, listen, when we're talking today, that it's not practical for you to transfer 100% of this risk. And so what you're really doing is you're getting on the side of the same side of the aisle, and you're starting to agree with them. When you get into the letter R as part of that track, what we're talking about is this retaining of the risk. So even though that and have a sense that maybe they think they can self-insure, what you want to do is you want to, again, begin to position your story with them on the front end, not waiting until they bring it up, but you can just make this conversational and say, a lot of my clients, in addition to the idea of not thinking it's practical to try to transfer 100% of the risk, because they know that could create a obligation that could be more sizable than that they have a budget for. But conversely, if you think about retaining the risk 100%, that doesn't make sense either. And so here you're, in a very logical, conversational way, you're beginning to dispel this idea. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying ultimately to find a common ground. And so just to kind of round out, Tom, in the interest of time, the rest of the acronym. So the A is avoiding the risk. And that's really part of why that client is telling you that they can retain it, is because they think they're just going to avoid it. They think it's never going to happen to them. And that's where you have the opportunity to, again, talk about this idea that they're going to live this long life, and you think your health will change along the way. And because remember, part of this, any of these objections is, and self-insuring is just one component of it, is this idea that they have to internalize and really believe that there would be a time in their life where they would actually need this coverage. Because if they don't have a need for this coverage in their mind, and you can't convince them otherwise by just having this conversation and talking about things, then it doesn't really matter if they're going to self-insure. It doesn't really matter if they think their family will take care of them. All these other objections will be their exit strategy, as I mentioned, about like the movie theater. And so the C represents, in part of this track, is that this happy medium that today, when we talk, Bob and Mary, what I want to make sure of is that you understand that the extremes of transferring and the extremes of trying to retaining, both of those 100% are not the best approach. The best approach to maximize the most leverage and for you to really accomplish your goals is to look for an opportunity where we can look for an approach today that will co-insure the risk. And by co-insuring, we're going to find that happy medium of what amount that you want to transfer to a third party, that being the insurance company, and the amount that you feel like you can retain. And therefore, it's all about making sure we can have affordability and it can fit into your budget. And with the knowledge I'm going to share with you, I want to make sure that you're going to be empowered to make this decision. So Tom, that's a little bit of an example of how we can use and it's easy for you to remember. If you'll just think of that word track, TRACK, I think that will help you not just with self-insuring, but it will help you in overcoming any of these other objections that people tend to bring up.
Right. Yeah. Good points, Dennis. And that's one of the things that interesting that jumped out at me that I just want to remind you guys about is the fact that he talked about when we're on self-insure, which is a topic today, and it is a lot of the times that denial where they're thinking it's never going to happen to me. But it also lays into that whole thing when we get into our sales side of it, when we talk about designing a plan. One of the biggest things we talk about, right, is the abilities of these plans, right? Is it available in that state? Is it going to get you through underwriting? We know all that stuff. Then we have to decide on, we always say, don't sell them a plan they can't afford. And again, it's easy to do. In long-term care, we really had to reel in agents. That was something we spent a lot of time on, talking about this whole thing that Dennis said about co-insuring and spreading that risk. Because with long-term care, you could have really expensive plans out there and you could design some real powerhouse plans. We can do that in short-term care too. And luckily it's more affordable and the claims triggers are a little bit looser than what you had with traditional long-term care. So I can convince anybody, and I think I can teach you folks to convince anybody that, these plans that we're selling with short-term care and extended care, these home care plans, it's almost not if you'll use it, it's probably when you'll use it and to what degree, right? Because with these claim triggers that we've talked about time and time again on these webinars, you're going to end up using these plans for things like hip replacements and things like knee replacements and all that other stuff, minor surgeries that you may not have used the other plans with. And they're indemnity plans. So they're saying the benefit's going to come to you regardless of other insurance, no matter what. So there's no co-insurance worries. So I think we can convince anybody that these plans, if you purchase one, it's probably going to be something that's going to have some value to you in the future. The next part that I'm getting to in a long-winded way is saying the denial that they might have is if you overinsure and if you say, oh, I'm going to sell you the best short-term care plan too, whether it's long-term care or short-term care, we can design really robust plans, right? We show some examples of that $1 million plan I bring up every so often is you can design really powerhouse plans. But remember, when you're looking at a 65, 70-year-old, 75-year-old, they might love that thought of, wow, that would be great. But if you overshoot their ticket, that's one of the reasons we talk about. Listen to your clients, talk to them, ask them. We're all in this together to try to solve a problem. Don't design a plan that's so expensive that they're going to pivot over to the self-insured because they have to, right? They're afraid to tell you that, okay, I can't afford that. I'm just absolutely can't do it. They'll say, maybe in this case, I'm thinking maybe I'll be able to put some money away and self-insure. So again, it all plays together. Listen to all the different webinars and all the different things as we train you, because Dennis hit on great points with his track concept. And it's just so valuable to you to realize, number one, the mentality of people and realizing to educate them a little bit. And you don't have to go to college for this, guys. Educate them about the fact that, hey, I don't have to answer 100% of your problems that you might have at claim time with a plan today. What I want to do is show you it's all about leveraging. You know what? I can get you a plan that's very affordable to you, and it can be something that's so well leveraged that you're going to say, hey, that's smart business, right? And it's affordable today, and at the time of claim, we know good chance claim's going to happen. At the time of claim, it's going to be so well leveraged that you're going to be really glad you did it. And that's going to lead into this next area, Dennis, unless you want to add more to it, is we're going to show you the power of leveraging these plans. Like here's a 65-year-old example here of just $100 a day benefit. Remember, that's $3,000 a month, pretty powerful. And this would be with the underwriting. If you go to some of our underwriting, when we talk about using the pivot, Insta Pivot, or looking at closer at the applications, remember Omniflex, for example, which I think, yep, it is what we used here. That one is really loose underwriting, right? Night and day over what we have with long-term care, and a really nice spread compared to what you have against other comprehensive short-term care plans that are out there. So you can spread the underwriting net very wide with this $100 day plan. So almost everybody you're talking to, you're going to find that you could offer coverage like this if it's in a state where they have this available. And if you look at the annual premium for that, $739 a year, and with the $300 prescription drug reimbursement, remember that's $439 per year. And again, we could skinny this plan down more, but this is a 65-year-old. That's not a bad deal when you're starting to look at $439 per year divided over 12 months, right? And if they have a claim in 6 years from then, so 65 and 6 or 65 and 15, that's more the 80-year-old, you can look at the break even. And that's where we talk about this leverage, where we say, if you took these dollars, we're not doing future value. I'll show you that in this tool that we have if you want to go deeper, but just dollar for dollar, you know what? If you go on claim for 45 days, that would cover that whole 739. If you go on for 27 days, that would cover the 439, right? So that's 16 times or 27 times the leverage. And again, we'll get into future value showing that if you earned interest on that as dollars, we have calculators for all that. If you want to get deeper, you don't really have to. That's my point. And I think Dennis will agree is that most of you don't have to pull this slide out even. All you have to do is say, the one thing I've seen is that these plans, if we decide to protect yourselves today, we can make something that for sure will fit in your budget. And when your head hits the pillow tonight, you'll have the peace of mind of knowing I've got a plan that's, leveraged 6-7 times what I paid for it. They're very well leveraged plans, and we could pull out all the way down to True Freedom, that prepaid home care plan, the tremendous amount of leveraging it is to plan ahead. So again, I just want to make sure you guys know, simplify. You don't have to give exact days. You don't have to, if you need to, you can have something like this as a reference saying, here's just one example. But what I want you to do is realize how easy it is in the broad terms to say, that's why this turned my head. It really isn't my wheelhouse. I won't kid you. Most of the time I'm out selling XYZ product. But when I learned about extended care and I learned about this coming tsunami of all these people are going to need help and they're not going to have access to the entitlements that are really out there today from the government, we know we need to self-insure and we need to protect our families a little bit more. This is really powerful. And some of these plans leverage out so well that it's just smart to say, yeah, don't use mom's money, use somebody else's. And again, the mom reference, Dennis can elaborate on a little bit if you want to. Now is probably a good time, is bring it up ahead of time. Talk about, hey, the one thing some people do is, hey, maybe I can self-insure. Maybe this is something that I could take care of myself if it happens. Well, number one, it'll probably happen. And number two, Dennis, why don't you give a real quick background on the mom concept and how that's an easy way to start the conversation?
Well, and all these things are just things that through trial and error, Tom and I have been doing this a long time, and the things that don't work, we're not telling you about, but the things that do work, we share with you. And if you use it or incorporate it into your personality, all the better. It works for my personality. It may not work for your personality, or may not work for Tom's. But the concept of mom is that you set the stage when that client is, when you're getting into that discussion about them wanting to self-insure, say, well, gee, why would you want to hurt mom? And they think, what are you talking about? I would never hurt mom. And what do you mean by that? Well, mom represents my own money. And versus the concept that we all know, which is OPM, which is other people's money. I said, I'd rather use other people's money. This calculator that Tom's going to share with you was developed. We developed it originally for long-term care, and we called it self-insuring. Is it worth the risk? And really, we're going to make some tweaks to it. I know some of you maybe have asked already, can you get the calculator? And the calculator is more specific to right now, as far as in the inflation. We don't have the ability to show simple inflation. We're only showing compound inflation, which means if you were writing like the GTL Recover Cash, which does have compound inflation, it would work. But we're gonna, when we can come up for air and get a little time, Tom and I are going to collaborate and have a version of this. And these are just tools, right? And some of it you can talk again. Coming back to that, to that track example that I gave you, that the acronym. Think about this when you're laying down recommendations. Find out where their comfort level is. If truly they think they want to retain the risk, how much do you want to retain? I've already shared with you today that retaining 100% isn't practical. Do you want to retain 70%, 80%? So whatever example that you end up showing them from a premium standpoint, get their input, because once they buy into the idea that they will co-insure some of this, then it's just finding the elasticity. But the power of this, just to show you the power of leverage and to show it with present dollars versus future dollars, Tom, this is just an example. If you want to pick up and explain that, or if you want me to, that's fine.
Yeah, and I hope I didn't pull you off the mom concept of my own money versus using somebody else's money, and that the insurance company's money, because that's that leveraging we talked about. And again, this tool, I right now have it in an in-between stage, I'd call. You can see I have my little self-insure TR down here. It didn't have the simple inflation, so I'm trying to jerry rig this. The premium's right for an example here for a 55-year-old, and I used a 4% investment growth. So with this plan, it says daily benefit, but that's just because of what it calculates down here. It's still accurate. A 2-year plan at $9,000 a month, which would be a $300 per day, and you'll see there's a $300 per day. So the numbers work still. It just is a little bit funky if you're looking close at it. But if a 55-year-old bought that, you can see we put the 3 scenarios at claim potentially at age 75, 80, and 85. And again, this gets detailed where this tool, we haven't put it out there for you guys. Even when we fix it, we may have it available for select people, but we don't want agents to jump on the site and think, oh my God, they have calculators and all this really confusing stuff. Even our InstaPivot tool, Dennis and I talk about it all the time. That InstaPivot underwriting tool that I'll show you just real briefly today before we let you go, it's an unbelievably powerful tool. And people who are in a little bit deeper in the forest for short-term care and extended care, they love that tool. But again, my fear is I don't want agents to see it on there first time they come out of the woodwork to look at that site. We don't want them to think, oh my gosh, there's tools. We got to learn this. Underwriting is really complicated. Again, simple. We want you to know we have tools all over available like this. And Dennis and I have a wealth of knowledge that we can share with you for how many years we've been in this industry, how we can show you how to answer all this quickly and easily and use tools to do it. But you don't really need to use a lot of them, and you don't have to feel like it's a total necessity. So if you look here in this example, you can see the pool of money at the time of claim. Again, I'm jerry-rigging this, so it's not totally accurate 100%, but it just shows you, in this case, how much you'd have to throw in for a lump sum to cover what you have on the coverage side of it. So again, I'm not going to go deep in it, but it just shows those big numbers saying, you're paying premium amounts of 25, 23 in this example. And again, this is fudged a little bit from what you saw up top, but I had to do that to make the numbers work and be accurate. You can see here, instead of that, you'd be paying $18,000 in annually, or a lump sum of $256. So again, when we have the other tool, we'll have a training on it and we'll have a short video. If we put it up there and have it available for everything, it'll be much, much more user-friendly, and it won't have to be me talking around why it looks like it's wrong, but the numbers do work out.
Hey, Tom, just to pick that back up, just to show just the power of leverage, the 50,000 that was showing paid in, and it's paying out over $250,000, or in some cases almost 300,000, versus someone who would have to make a contribution of 18,000 a year if they want to retain the risk. And remember, Tom was being, with this calculator, was being extremely generous. 4%, most people don't get checking or savings. They're not getting a 4% return. And remember, they can't have that money where it has to be readily available. If they are really going to retain the risk, that money can't be sitting in their 401k or in a mutual fund or someplace where they're getting, even more growth, because or they can't be sitting in equity in a condo or whatever it might be, because obviously the whole idea is it has to be available for you to. So these numbers are all subjective in that sense, but the concept that we're trying to share with you, it just comes back to this idea of helping them to think about the power of leverage and why it makes more sense to use someone else's money versus their money. And these are other examples that we've had. And I think, Tom, in the interest of time, I just want to jump over to again, the power of helping people to look at the similarity of how they've transferred the risk and co-insured the risk. and retain the risk, kind of back to that TRACK acronym, in terms of in other aspects of their life, in terms of the four major risks to their portfolio. If you want to pick something up prior to that, I think that.
No, go ahead, Dennis. And again, just to know, we have these other things that are talking about, about affordability. That's part of that whole thing about the risk, talking about, if you self-insure, remember, you're paying smaller amount now compared to later, et cetera. So again, I'm going to let you go ahead on that, on the other point. I just wanted to show that all these different things that we have that would help with that argument. Now, I'm just going to go over to the site, Dennis, as you're talking, and then we'll just finish up.
Well, I mean, the power of understanding this idea that, if the client is giving you really the final pushback on, hey, I'm going to retain it, or it's all about affordability. If they can't afford the $300 a month, if they can't afford $200 or $100, if they can't fit whatever that premium is into their budget, then you have to look them in their eyes and look them straight and just say, what, with all due respect, then you can't really afford the event. There's no way that you can afford to come out of pocket with $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $10,000 a month if you're having a hard time thinking about setting aside $100 a month. If you can't write the small check, there's no way you're going to be able to write the big check. And that is just common sense. And it's no different when we look at the probability of why they have homeowners insurance, why they have auto insurance, the idea of going into the hospital. I mean, obviously they use OPM, they use other people's money, they use the insurance company's money for the biggest risks that they face. We're talking about you, yourself as a person. If you're willing to insure an object, why aren't you willing to insure yourself? I mean, and that's the power of understanding what those odds are. And the odds are very, very high, as Tom said, especially given these extended care plans where they can break a hip, they can have a fall or a fracture, and they could get money out of these plans. It's not like long-term care that they have to have that 90-day certification. So that's the visual there with the risk. And I didn't want to go too deep on that, Tom. But the point is, remember, we've said this to you in previous training. When you're introducing something that's new, compare something that's new to something they already own and understand. And that's very simple to do when that objection is, I want to retain the risk. Then why is it with your house being paid for today, Bob and Mary, you still have auto insurance or you still have homeowners insurance, don't you? Oh, yeah. Well, why do you have that? Your home is paid for. Well, I wouldn't want to have that risk. Okay, well, what's the probability of a fire to your home? What's the probability of, again, odds of needing some form of care? So the site that we have is a site with all the tools and resources. And again, this is conversational. What Tom said earlier about the calculator, if you keep it simple, you hit the easy button and just help people to balance the difference between logic and emotion. You've got to play a little bit to the emotional side of this, but you also have to play to the logical side of this about how they do business every day of the week. The main thing is that people don't want to feel like they're getting insurance overload. And that's sometimes what you're bumping up against, is because they do have their auto insurance, their homeowners insurance, their life insurance. And now here it is, they're layering in another insurance. And so I would rather at the end of the day find the ability in that co-insuring where they're going to retain 80% of the risk and you just give them a foundation plan at 20% of the risk, converting them from a prospect to a client and having them have some coverage is better than trying to overshoot, as Tom said, and present a Cadillac plan. And then they basically walk away because you're giving them an all or nothing proposition. Just doesn't work in today's marketplace as far as that approach to selling. It has to be a blend of just common sense, talking to them in a very conversational way. And yes, it's always nice to be able to prove your case with calculators, but it all depends on who you're in front of. An engineer, yeah, no problem. They're analytical. But the average individual, I think you can do, if you do everything that we're talking about and just keep it simple and hit the easy button, and just know by bringing it up on the surface and being proactive versus reactive, and making it conversational, you'll take any of those objections, whether it's retaining the risk or my family will take care of me or Medicare will pay. You'll take them all off the table but you've got to do it in a very sequential way as part of the whole presentation.
Absolutely. And some of the times, Dennis, just to reiterate your point on that is, remember I said we may not put a calculator on here because we don't want agents who haven't heard us speak about it think that it's going to be overcomplicated. I'm betting at some point we will put a calculator up here. And some of the times, and I think some of you, I know I see some names that have been in the long-term care in the trenches there for a while. A lot of times it's just making your client feel comfortable, kind of building that trust that you have tools available you could show them. And almost always, I've talked to agents across the board who said, thanks for having all that. We have tons of different tools for long-term care. And a lot of times they say, I never actually have to open that tool and use it, but I tell my clients I have it. You know what I mean? I have a tool that could show you how well leveraged this plan is compared to how much you'd have to invest today. And just like Dennis said, once in a while, somebody, will say, oh, I'd love to see that. I'm really curious exactly what it is. But most of the time, it just gives you that little support of knowing, hey, I went through, and the group we're working with, our integrity family, has all these tools available to show you how much you have to invest today, when the break even is. And these plans are really well leveraged. So that's one of the things I want you to feel secure about as I design a plan for you. So kind of just totally folds into what Dennis is saying. Same thing with the InstaPivot tool. That's that underwriting tool. We're glad it's on there and we want you to know it's there, but if most of you can just use an application or know in your head, if you go to our plan design webinars, hey, they can get a home health care only plan down here, as long as they're not getting care today, or one of them has the cognitive impairment and one doesn't. Like Manhattan Life is a lot like True Freedom. Are you getting care today, or are you living in a facility? If not, we can get you a plan. That's how easy it is. These aren't that much different. You know what I mean? When you look at these short-term care plans, it's night and day. Everybody out there, I recognize the names who sell long-term care. No, it's night and day compared to long-term care traditionally. These plans, you can grab that application out and you can talk that through, saying, hey, you haven't had any of these big conditions, have you? And you'd know in 5 minutes whether somebody probably qualifies for any of these plans as well. So very simple. But again, we have the InstaPivot to do it if you want to get deep and show exactly based on different conditions, what are your options in a given state. So
Tom, what's difficult when we do these webinars is we throw the net wide with all of our partners, and there's different experience levels that people come on to this webinar with. Some who are, as Tom likes to use the example of deep in the trenches. They've been doing it. They eat, sleep, and drink this stuff day in and day out. And then there's some of you who are just saying, gosh, I just want to have a way to go back to my Medicare client or my final expense client. And you're more, you're definitely not going to be looking to become a subject matter expert. And so we want to make sure that when you go and you watch these videos, you see all the tools that Tom is scrolling through and showing you that are available, that for whatever level of commitment you want to make to this market, as well as whatever level of education you want to make on your own behalf to get smarter, don't feel as though that you have to become, we're not trying to turn everyone into an LTC specialist here, or a short-term care specialist. We're trying to make sure you know how to navigate through on these different topics. What is the best approach? And so we're dispensing a lot of information. Some of it you can take, and some of it you might say, hey, that's not, my approach. I want to do just this, and this. And remember, this is, even with the products and on the design and everything else, it's not a one size fit all.
You bet. Perfect. Well, and we'll let you go with that today. And again, there's no easy way to know how deep to go into the weeds with you guys either on these topics like we talked about. But remember, we have everything you need on that Integrity STC site. And you saw all the videos there as I scrolled through and Dennis was speaking, and all the short fireside chat videos below that. And we have product videos as well. And if you go into any one of the products, you can check that out. The biggest thing is the next steps up to you. Contact that marketer who got you on board And if you want to go right from the site, you can get appointed, click the get appointed button. And again, that thing will send you right in there, and it's super simple. That's how easy it is to get appointed and start that process is right here. Your name, your email, your address, and which upline integrity partner got you on the webinars. We can track that internally based on the codes they got you into the webinars. Here's the products. I recommend you click all products just to make sure, see where you're at. And this is just a little thing down here to make sure you're not a robot, to put in that little 4+6 or whatever it might be randomly. And then click sign me up, and we'll take care of getting you to the right spot. So that's how easy it is. And again, the next step is up to you, because at this point, we need to make sure you guys are out there taking that next step and having these products available. So appreciate all of your time being on this webinar. And we have another one today that's going to be a little bit more in the weeds, that we're going to try to tell you that it's easier to simplify it, but we have tools available, and that's our Medicaid. I believe that's this afternoon, the Medicaid.
I think that's at 4 Eastern, Tom, 3 Central. And again, we know everyone's busy. We want to make sure that you have that you know that you don't have to go it alone. I think that's why, between the marketer that invited you on this, that you've got that support mechanism, to knowing that you've got our support here with the dedicated site that has everything. We're trying to do as much as we can to make it easy for you, and to be that resource for you. So thanks, everyone. And if you have time, jump on the Medicaid one. It'll be pretty educational for those of you that maybe feel like your clients, that you've heard that objection a time or two as well. So
thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Have a great day. Thanks for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you on a webinar soon. Have a great day, everybody.
The next step is yours. Contact your marketer for more information and to start offering short-term care solutions to your clients. And be sure to sign up for our other short-term care hot topic webinars.